carto positioning. You all set? And there's a spare up there in case they... Okay. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Yashodanandana Brajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Brajana Ranjana Dana Brajana Ranjana Yamuna Tiravanachari Yamuna Tiravanachari Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Mr. Paramahansa Parivadikacharya Ashtottara Sri Srimad Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai ISKCON BBT Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Parivadikacharya Ashtottara Sri Srimad Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Ki Jai Ananda Koti Vaishnavindra Ki Jai Nama Acharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai Srimad Bhagavad Gita Ki Jai Samaveda Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Guru and Gauranga. Okay. So text 9, I think. Welcome. Hare Krishna. Will you be staying for Bhagavad Gita class? Oh, we're on text number 9 of chapter 6, page 264. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. On this 19th day of March, 2024 in San Diego. We read it from Srimad Bhagavad Gita as it is, translation and commentary by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. And we're in chapter 6 entitled Dhyāna-yoga on page 264 at the bottom. Surin Mitrari Udasina Madhyastha Dveshya Bandhushu Sarushu Apicha Papeshu Samabudhir Vishishyate Surin Mitra Yudasina Madhyastha Dveshya Bandhushu Sadhu Shapicha Papeshu Samabuddhi Vishishyate Surin Mitra Yudasina Madhyastha Dveshya Bandhushu Sadhu Shapicha Papeshu Samabuddhi Vishishyate Surin Mitra Yudasina Madhyastha Dveshya Bandhushu Sadhu Shapicha Papeshu Samabuddhi Vishishyate. Go ahead, Jayad. Surin Mitra Yudasina Madhyastha Dveshya Bandhushu Sadhu Shapita Papeshu Samabuddhi Vishishyate. Anyone else? Anyone online want to try?
Surin Mitrari Udasina
Surin Mitra Yudasina
Madhyastha Desha Bandhushu
Madhyastha Dveshya Bandhushu
Sadhushu Apicha Papeshu
Sadhu Shapicha Papeshu
Samabuddhi Vishishyate.
Samabuddhi Vishishyate. Okay, word by word meaning. Surit, two well-wishers by nature. Mitra, benefactors with affection. Ari, enemies. Udasina, neutrals between belligerents. Madhyastha, mediators between belligerents. Dvesha, the envious. Bandhushu, and the relatives or well-wishers. Sadhushu, unto the pious. Api, as well as cha and papeshu, unto the sinners. Samabuddhihi, having equal intelligence. Vishishyate, is far advanced. Translation. Krishna says to Arjuna, a person is considered still further advanced when he regards honest well-wishers, affectionate benefactors, the neutral, mediators, the envious, friends and enemies, the pious and the sinners, all with an equal mind. Okay, further advanced. So let's read the translation to the last one. So we'll see what he's further advanced than. A person is said to be established in self-realization and is called a yogi or mystic when he is fully satisfied by virtue of acquired knowledge and realization. Such a person is situated in transcendence and is self-controlled. He sees everything, whether it be pebbles, stones, or gold, as the same. So, there's no purport to text 9, so I'm going to read text 10 with the purport. You can chant it for me. Yogi yunjita satatam atmanam mahasistitaha ekaki yata chittatma nirashira parigraha. Abhi, can you give this lady the book? Yeah, page 265. Okay, text 10 translation. A transcendentalist should always engage his body, mind, and self in relationship with the Supreme. He should live alone in a secluded place and should always carefully control his mind. He should be free from desires and feelings of possessiveness. Purport. Krishna is realized in different degrees as Brahman, Paramatma, and the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Krishna consciousness means, concisely, to be always engaged in the transcendental loving service of the Lord. But those who are attached to the impersonal Brahman or the localized Supersoul are also partially Krishna conscious, because the impersonal Brahman is the spiritual ray of Krishna, and the Supersoul is the all-pervading partial expansion of Krishna. Thus, the impersonalist and the meditator are also indirectly Krishna conscious. A directly Krishna conscious person is the topmost transcendentalist because such a devotee knows what is meant by Brahman and Paramatma. Okay. He knows, his knowledge of the Absolute Truth is perfect, whereas the impersonalist and the meditative yogi are imperfectly Krishna conscious. Nevertheless, all of these are instructed herewith to be constantly engaged in their particular pursuits, so that they may come to the highest perfection sooner or later. The first business of a transcendentalist is to keep the mind always on Krishna. One should always think of Krishna and not forget him even for a moment. Concentration of the mind on the Supreme is called samadhi, or trance. In order to concentrate the mind, one should always remain in seclusion and avoid disturbance by external objects. He should be very careful to accept favorable and reject unfavorable conditions that affect his realization. And, in perfect determination, he should not hanker after unnecessary material things that entangle him by feelings of possessiveness. All these perfections and precautions are perfectly executed when one is directly in Krishna consciousness, because direct Krishna consciousness means self-abnegation, wherein there is very little chance for material possessiveness. Srila Rupa Goswami characterizes Krishna consciousness in this way. Anasaktasya vishayan yataham upayunjataha nirbandha Krishna sambandhe yuktam vairagyamuchyate prapanchikradya buddhya harisambandhi vastunaha mumukshabi parityago vairagyam palgukatyate. When one is not attached to anything, but at the same time accepts everything in relation to Krishna, one is rightly situated above possessiveness. On the other hand, one who rejects everything without knowing of its relationship to Krishna is not as complete in his renunciation. Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu 1, 255 to 256. A Krishna-conscious person well knows that everything belongs to Krishna, and thus he is always free from feelings of personal possession. As such, he has no hankering for anything on his own personal account. He knows how to accept things in favor of Krishna consciousness and how to reject things unfavorable to Krishna consciousness. He is always aloof from material things because he is always transcendental, and he is always alone, having nothing to do with persons not in Krishna consciousness. Therefore, a person in Krishna consciousness is the perfect yogi. Om jnana timirandasya jnanandana shalakaya chakshur unmilatam mena tasmai shri gurave namaha. I was born in the darkest of ignorance, but my spiritual master Srila Prabhupada opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my humble obeisance unto him and all members of Sri Parampara. Chad, can you go and make sure the doors are closed as far as possible? So, first the context. This chapter is called Dhyāna-yoga, which means the yoga of meditation. And it's traditionally is divided into 8 parts. That's why it's called Ashtanga yoga. Ashta is 8, Anga is limbs. And if you go to yoga studios, they'll probably be often teaching some version of it. You know, kind of a beginner's meditation. I remember many, many years ago, I started my, quest for enlightenment by beginning with Hatha Yoga. I didn't know anything about Krishna consciousness. I just wanted to restore my health. I had a kind of a health crisis with hepatitis, so I was in the hospital for a month. This is back in '69. And when I got out, because I was interested in Indian music, and India was becoming popular, and so I said, well, let me try this yoga stuff. And I was living on Long Island. There was absolutely no yoga studios there, but there were in New York. They were beginning to open in Manhattan, and I started with that. And so we learned the bending and the stretching, which is very good for your health, you know, and there was some rudimentary meditation. I later went to another place where I tried to meditate on the syllable Om, you know. It was hard. I maybe got 10 minutes max. You know, it's hard to keep chanting Om. But then by that time I discovered the Hare Krishna mantra, and I started meditating on that and chanting, and it was much easier. Because that sound, this Hare Krishna mantra, Krishna's name means all attractive. That's what the name means. The words in Sanskrit, it's a perfect language, and they're all based on roots. The root of what is the root of the word Krishna? Karshati, to means to draw, to pull. And so just by meditating on that name, I felt, transcendental dollop of bliss, and I can sense the power of it. And eventually I came in touch with the Hare Krishna movement. And if you're interested, there's a, I don't know if did the name David Susskind mean anything to anyone? You have to have a lot of white hair in order to be interested. I remember him from the 50s and 60s and 70s. He had one of these, you remember, I think. He had the devotees on. He had the devotees from the local New York temple, which is the Brooklyn temple. It was booming at that time. There were 70, 80 devotees living in the temple. And he had them on there, and I ran into it on YouTube. There's something called, I forget what it's called, not ancient, but, old movies, This was 1971, so it was 50 years ago. But I remember seeing that on TV in my parents' house, in black and white. I guess it was filmed in color because there was a little bit of color. The quality wasn't so good, but there were all of these devotees that I knew when I moved in 2 years later. Bhardraj, who was very famous, his son made him famous. He became one of the main kirtaniyas, chanting Hare Krishna all over the world. And then Satsarup Maharaj was there, and Bhagavan Das, Rukmini, who was very established. Anyway, they were all like in their early 20s. And everybody was super effulgent, and he saw they had musical instruments. So he asked, because he doesn't know anything. So what are they all about? Give us a sample. So they started the kirtan. Before long, they were all standing up and dancing and chanting. Like 5, 6, 7 minutes. He didn't, all right. Anyway, he interviewed them, and they were explaining Krishna consciousness. So if you're interested in that, I'm telling you, it's quite an insight into the mood in those early days, when Prabhupada was visiting all the time, and it was a relatively new movement. And I was reminded of why I joined, because everyone was chanting so much, and the bliss was really overflowing. So how does that relate to this? So the Bhagavad Gita, it came out actually a year later. The unabridged Bhagavad Gita came out in 1972. So they were reading the abridged version. The abridged version came out, which is the same translations basically, but maybe 1/3 or 1/4 the number of purports. Welcome back, Krishna, Bhakti Krishna. So what Krishna is describing here, the context, he's giving different ways in which you can make progress toward what we call self-realization. Now self-realization really means understanding who you are. It begins with that. What am I actually? That's the first step in that's the first lesson in Krishna's instructions back in chapter 2. The whole context is that, you may or may not be familiar, these 18 chapters of the Bhagavad Gita are part of a much, much, much larger book called the Mahabharata. Mahabharata is the greater history of India, and it focuses on this one epical battle that took place between the Kurus and the Pandavas and their loyalists on each side for the rule of the earth, basically. And on one side was King Yudhishthira and his 4 brothers. They were called the Pandavas, and each of the Pandavas were actually sons of different gods. It's kind of a long story, but 3 of them were sons of Kunti, and 2 of them were sons of Madri. Pandu had 2 wives like that. Anyway, I'm not going to go into a long story on that. But each of them, and so Yudhishthira, he was the son of Yamaraj, who was also known as Dharmaraj. He's Dharma personified. He's the one who judges after death if you're sinful and like that. So it's very significant. Arjuna was the son of Indra, and Bhima was the son of Vayu, the wind god, very powerful. They were all great warriors, and they were all completely virtuous. They were all devotees of Krishna. In fact, they were his friends, especially Arjuna. And the other two, the twins, they were sons of the Srini Kumaras. They were also, pious and everything. So on the other side, there was an attempt to usurp the kingdom. It's a long story. Dhritarashtra was he was the eldest of of the sons of Vyasadeva, actually, titularly, but he was blind, so he wasn't really eligible to be the king. But because the Pandu died untimely and they were just boys, then while they were being raised, then Dhritarashtra was running the kingdom, through his agents until they grew up. That was the whole idea. But his sons thought, well, come on, we're right close to the kingdom now. He's the king and we're the heirs. Why should the Pandavas get the kingdom, So his 100 sons, led by Duryodhana, they massed an army to try to take over the kingdom, and eventually the battle came down to Kurukshetra. This battle here. So Arjuna, he's the main fighter on the side, Krishna's side. In fact, Krishna is serving as his chariot driver. Krishna takes a menial position to serve as devotee in this case, and therefore he's in perfect position to speak the Bhagavad Gita to him on the battlefield. It's not the ideal place, you think, for speaking this knowledge, but it's tremendous drama. Because Arjuna is unsure of what real Dharma is. There's a key verse in the 2nd chapter where he surrenders to Krishna. They're friends, So Arjuna is making the point because he sees on the other side his beloved teacher who taught him the martial arts, his grandfather figure, Bhishma Dev, who helped raise him when they were orphaned, untimely by Pandu. And many other friends and relatives are on the other side. And so his basic argument is, what do I need this kingdom for? Suppose I win, the battle, and I have this kingdom, but it'll be soaked with the blood of the people who I love, who I helped to kill. Where's the joy in that? So that, and for other reasons, he said, and I'm going to kill all these men, the women will become unprotected, and society will go to hell, I'll be responsible. So he had all these arguments, some based on Shastra, actually, the Vedas. And so his final conclusion was, he sits down, the battle's about to begin, he sits down on the battle, drops his bow, and says, Govinda, I cannot fight. I will not fight. But before that, he said to Krishna, okay, I'm approaching you not as a friend now, because the friend is not going to get anything, but as my guru, my spiritual master. Now you instruct me for sure what is real Dharma and what's the right thing for me to do, so I can attain Shreya. Shreya is well-being, and I can help others to attain it. In other words, he wanted to do the right thing, but he didn't know what it was. He was torn because his heart, he couldn't face killing all his friends and relatives, but he knew the right thing was to bring Dharma back for the good of everybody in the world, in this person. So that's the setup of the Gita. It's very dramatic. The whole conversation is between these two massive armies about ready to take battle. And if you read the verses through, just the Sanskrit, it maybe takes 45 minutes, Anyway, so Krishna begins the lesson. You're lamenting for the bodies of these relatives, but nobody's going to die on this battlefield. The soul is the real person, and he gives this wonderful verse that anyone can. It's like one of these things where a light bulb goes off. And he says, just as in this body, every one of us body, we can remember how we were maybe 8 and 10 or something like that. We have memories from then, right? So they had a life at that time, but our body was different. Our mind was different. What was the same? We were the same. The soul is moving. We're moving through the body. We're transmigrating even in this one body. What to speak of between bodies? And so the mechanism of transmigration is such that it all depends on your consciousness of your mind. And mind is emphasized here in the 6th chapter. Because the totality of your desires, unfulfilled desires, your grudges, your phobias, as well as what you actually did in this life, because then karma comes in. If you were very kind to people, you performed charity, these are materially good things to do, and you get good karma from that in this life or the next life. But you still have to face death, birth, old age, disease, like this round of samsara, which is the basic impetus, that suffering is the basic impetus for us to try to get liberation. mukti. Even before you understand what bhakti is, that should move you to the point, well, how can I escape from this round of birth and death? But people don't believe in reincarnation. They forget. This is Krishna's mercy. Who can remember his past life? Anyone in the room here? No. But we did have a past life. We know we had a past life in this body. We can remember some things from earlier that we know. And we know we'll have a future life. But we also know it'll end. The body will end, but we will not end. In the second chapter, this key verse, Najayate, Mriyate, Vakadacha, Nayam Budva Bhavitava Nabuya. Ajo Nitya Shashvato Yam Purano Nahanyate Anyamane Sharire. It says, for the soul, the person, there is neither birth nor death at any time. We have not come into being. We always were. The new ones are not coming into being, nor in the future will new ones come into being. We are Aja Nitya, we are unborn, eternal, ever existing, and primeval. All of those describe Krishna too. We are just as eternal and unborn as he is. The soul is not slain when the body is slain, because they're on a battlefield, so he uses that. You can be slain by a disease or old age, whatever. But the body it's a machine. It's a very complicated, amazing machine. Each of our bodies and the incredible mechanism is proof that God exists, if you think about it. The intricacy, how the brain works, they still haven't figured that out. The subtle things that you can think of, reasoning, the emotions, and all this mechanism to keep it all going, which we don't know what's going on, the digestion and the circulation and the nervous system. You mean all of that was put together just by chance? That is the most ridiculous thing if you think about it. Obviously, there's a brain behind it. If you build a car, somebody figured it out, made a design, right? What about this car? So anyway, I'm just reviewing. So Krishna then gets on Arjuna's case. As soon as he surrenders as a disciple rather than a friend, says, you're talking like a pundit quoting the Vedas and everything, but you're lamenting for what is not worthy of grief, namely this physical body. You see, the wise lament neither for the living or the dead. But Arjuna, then he sympathizes with Arjuna, yes, but even though you may even know that, because these people are dear to you and so forth, when they die, there's going to be some emotional pain. You have to learn to tolerate that. And if you can tolerate that and the ups and downs of this world, both positive and negative, then you can become eligible for realization and liberation. And that's what we read here. He's describing a yogi who is becoming advanced in this Ashtanga yoga. The thing is, it's not for us. It's so difficult. Going alone, going alone to a secluded place, a sacred place, go to the Himalayas or something, and sit there alone, no sense gratification, no opposite sex, nothing like that. And, you're working on the mind, because the mind is very powerful. It wants to go here and there, and, it may be cold, it may be hot, it may be hungry, a million different things. So you have to learn how to tolerate all that and practice this meditation on Om, on the breathing, controlling the breathing. The 8 steps are this. First is Yama and Niyama. Yama and Niyama. Yama is the don'ts. Niyama is the do's. The don'ts is we have our don'ts, if you want to be a serious Hare Krishna. No illicit sex, no gambling, no intoxication, no meat eating, And people they say, oh man, I don't know if I can do that, You can't do it just if you're trying to do that without the chanting, without the dancing, without the whole, because the whole idea is that Krishna consciousness gives you something else to be entranced with and a source of pleasure. And you find that you certainly don't need meat eating. After you take your first Sunday feast, we're coming up with Gaur Purnima, we'll have some really excellent cooks, And that's the first thing, And the others can come when you're serious about practicing devotional service. And because what you're doing in Krishna consciousness, you're tapping in to a source of unlimited spiritual pleasure, as opposed to this flickering material pleasure. And that's why I think I'll just out and out quote this verse in every class, because it always comes back to this. This is in the previous chapter, text 22. Yehi sang sparjaja boga. We can go turn to it. Everyone's got a book. 522. It really lays out the the basis of it. Yehi sangsparjita boga dukkha yonaya evate adyantabantang konteya nateshu ramate buddha, page 249. Now, this translation has been revised a little bit. An intelligent person does not take part in the pleasures which are due to the contact of the senses with their sense objects. O son of Kunti, such pleasures are the sources of misery and have a beginning and an end, and so the wise person does not delight in them. Now this is revolutionary, because generally in this world, that's all the kind of pleasures we know. It may be subtle pleasures of the mind, contacting, that's a big one. Or it can be the eyes, the ears, the touch, and all the things. This is the source of pleasure. But everyone knows that it has a beginning and an end. You don't want it to end, and so you open up another bag of Doritos, right? And before you know it, there's 3 bags, empty bags there, and you just ate them. And if you keep doing that, right, you get big, and it's a highly, what do they call it? Highly processed food, which has all kinds of negativities, And so before long, oh my God, the doctor says I have diabetes. Now what do I do? If you overdo any kind of material sense pleasures, you're going to have suffering. But even if you don't overdo it, if you just lead a normal life and enjoy, and you're not a bad person, like that, you're going to come back. You're going to have to take birth again, and then get old and disease and all this, and you're risking, I mean, let's just be. Am I exaggerating if I say that it's kind of iffy if this whole world kind of lasts? I mean, like it is. We have climate change. We have the doomsday clock at 90 seconds before misery. Do you know where the doomsday clock is? The scientists, since the World War II ended, and they had the bombs going off, they've had this thing where, and this is how close we are to Armageddon with another nuclear war. During the Cuban Missile Crisis, which I lived through, maybe you remember it. Yeah. It was horrible. I was 14 years old, and we just looked at the TV, and these guys were announcing, the talking heads were announcing, and they had a little. And it was like the Russian ships are coming toward Cuba, and we've what does it say? Blockaded it, but we didn't call it a blockade because that's an act of war. We called it a quarantine, but everyone knows what it meant. And so you got the Russian ships coming, and we know that if they have a clash, it could kick off a nuclear war like that. So the whole world is like on edge, And of course, the Russians blinked; they didn't have the confrontation. But I learned in the last few years. I don't know if you knew about this. The Russians, besides the surface ships, they had submarines who had nuclear torpedoes. There's at least one like that. So, if they had shot that torpedo off and they sunk one of our big aircraft carriers, you can imagine, that would have been World War III. That was it, So we found out about those. We had our, you've seen those movies where they had some radar under the water. So we knew they were there. So we contact Moscow to tell them, the commanders, that we're going to send down some depth charges that are not fatal. They're not meant to kill, just to warn you, to try to make you surface. But they didn't have, the communications weren't so developed where they could really inform the guys in the submarine. So they put down the depth charges, and they thought, oh, they feel the blast, war is on. War is on. Let's shoot those torpedoes. It's World War III. Just by Krishna's arrangement, the admiral of the whole fleet was in that submarine. And the 2 guys who were the co-captains or whatever, they were ready with the 2 keys. You've seen the movies, you have the 2 keys so one guy doesn't go crazy. And so they were ready to turn the keys. And he said, no, this can't be. It can't be. I know, this is surface. See what's going on. They surfaced, and of course there's no war going on. That's how close we all came to not being sitting here now. So this is the nature of material life. Is that now you can see me. I've had an accident. You can see I busted a tooth. How did that happen? Did I get in a fight? No. I got in a fight with the cement. I tripped, and I fell on my face. I was carrying 3 bags of the trash. I was taking out the trash. It just happened on Sunday. And suddenly, boom, oh, my God, Hare Krishna. And I chipped the tooth, and I got this cut. I needed some stitches. I had to go to urgent care and this and that. This out of the blue. This is the nature. Danger at every step. There's a verse like that, those who know. So that's the nature of material life. We're driving along on I-5, we may be doing everything right. We're not on our cell phone. We're completely sober. We're dying. But what about the other guys? It happens all the time. So this is the nature of material life, is that there's danger at every step. And how do we assure or make it more likely that we won't come back? Hare Krishna, nice to see you, Prabhu. That even if we leave our body, even if there's some accident, we are sure of not coming back. We have a book called Coming Back. It's all about reincarnation. The last chapter is Don't Come Back. It's all about Krishna consciousnness. I highly recommend it. We're going to reprint it and update some of the data. It was printed in '83, like 45 years old. But it's still true. So this is the main impetus of not just devotees, but any transcendentalist, is to somehow end this cycle of birth and death, birth and death, birth and death, which is ultimately a trap for the soul. And all because we try to enjoy independently of Krishna. The way Srila Prabhupada explains it, we were all in the spiritual world, but we become are curious to be competitors to Krishna, and so this whole material world is for us. And there's a wonderful verse, because one of the main things about material life, as you probably have heard, that fear is right around the corner. Anything may happen. You get a diagnosis, you hear about what your loved one is in danger, or gets a diagnosis, or suddenly your investment fell through, and whatever. That fear and anxiety is an intrinsic part of material life, So this is a verse describing how that fear started in us. It begins with the word bhaya. Bhaya means fear. Doesn't it sound like fear? Bhaya. Oh my God. Sanskrit is an incredible language. So it says, Bhayam dvitiya abhinaveshitaksad ishadapetasya viparhiyo asmati. Tanmahayato buddha abhajetam bhaktyakayesham gurudevatatma. So this is one of the 9 yogendras, who is one of the leading sons of an incarnation named Rishabdev, who appears in the other book called the Bhagavad Gita. And they just wander around and they give instruction. And so in the Srimad Bhagavatam, the Bhagavad Purana, which is our main book of Shastra, or scripture, they appear in the 11th canto, one after another, and they each give a whole lesson. And so this is a description. I always forget the name of the Yogendra, but Prabhupada quotes this first. Now, Prabhupada's name is, of course, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. What is the A.C.? That's his initiation that's the initials of his name before he took sannyas. Abhay Charanaravinda. You notice that word bhaya means fear. His abhaya means fearlessness, you see? Why is he fearless? Charanaravinda, because he's situated at the lotus feet of Krishna, you see? So, bhayam dvitiya abhinaveshitak syat. The word syat in Sanskrit means comes into being. Bhaya comes into being in our heart, because in the spiritual world there's no hint of any fear. Complete seclusion, security and bliss for eternity. In service to Krishna. So we turn away. Ishad is the complete Ishad apetasya. We turn our face away from Krishna because we're curious about the dualities and pain and pleasure in this material world. We want to compete with Krishna. That's the thing. Dvitiya means dualities, pleasure and pain, and all these things. We become absorbed in that, having turned away from Krishna. Viparyo asmriti. We forget everything. And viparya means reversed. Instead of being servants of God, we want to be the masters of everything. Instead of giving pleasure to Krishna, which really ultimately gives us the highest pleasure, we want to enjoy separate from Krishna, you see? And so we are separated. We're not really separated, but we think we are. We forget everything. And that asmriti means forgetfulness. And then how does that happen? Tanmayato, by Krishna's Maya energy. Krishna has so many energies, one of which is bewildering energy called Maya, to cover us, to cover our consciousness and to throw us down in the material world. Tanmayato, so one has to be Buddha, one has to be intelligent. And anyone who's sitting in the class is much more intelligent than the people who are carousing on that bar right down there. We're on this whole, now it's getting warm. I walked out, I was going to, let's see, what did I have to go? Oh yeah, I had to pick up a prescription for this thing. I had a little antiseptic, this cut was, so at CVS. So I finished, I took my car and run down there, it's just 2 blocks. Absolutely no parking spot. It was a little warm, it finally got a little warm. Sunday, everybody's at the beach. They're parking, I drove back and walked, It was a nice walk. So, one has to be intelligent in order to combat, or in order to negate this fear. And how does that work? Buddha abhajetam. One has to worship that very Lord that we rejected, that we turned away from. Abhajetam. How? Bhakti aikayesham, with one-pointed, pure devotional service. Now that's not easy to do, to come to that point. But that's the path that this leads you on. Bhakti Marga that Prabhupada gave, following the footsteps of Lord Chaitanya's and the whole line. So what's the result? Bhakti Guru Deva Tatma, and also seeing one's Guru, the spiritual preceptor is very important, spiritual master. Deva Tatma, on the level of the Lord, in other words, worshiping as divine messenger of God. So the whole program is how we got here and how we can get back to the spiritual world, right in that one verse. This is the Bhagavatam. It's very concise and beautiful Sanskrit. So anyway, Krishna is giving the same instruction here, but he's giving it step by step. And he's going to go through this whole explanation of Ashtanga Yoga, and eventually, and one of the results of it is, as he just spoke, is that you see, I'm in chapter 5, okay, back to chapter 6, sorry. Is that you see, Suran Mitra Dudasina, that you become, you're not judging everybody on the externals. You see everyone as a spirit soul, you see? And so whether one is Surit, which is a dear friend, or Mitra, which is not, just an acquaintance, benefactor, affection, or Udasina Madhyasta, Dvesha, Bandhashu. Dvesha means those are envious of you. Bandhashu is your, other friends. So these are all different kinds of people, but you see, it's not that you don't see their different ways of relating, but you see what is the same about them. You see what is the most important. They're all spirit souls. And they all can be uplifted. They all can be given Krishna consciousness. That's another aspect. Is that the most pleasing thing to Krishna is to give him to others. Is to help others become Krishna conscious. Because suddenly you see, I'm on a path towards salvation, but these are my brothers and sisters. Well, it doesn't matter what color, what age they are. They're all, and so somehow or other, if I can help them start their path under Krishna consciousness, give them a little prasadam. We used to have a cat out here. I tell about the cat. They gave him the name Narada Muni. I said, no, you can't give a cat a name like that, but they insisted, so he's Narada Muni. So this cat, he would hang around here. So naturally, we would give him milk products. They like milk, especially cheer. Cheer is concentrated milk. It's very sweet and delicious, So I would take a little bit of kheer, put it on a leaf and put it down there, and Narada Muni would come and lick it up, So this particular cat, because he was imbibing this sacred substance which had been offered to the deity with love and devotion, that is spiritual, and he's sure of exalted birth, at least a human birth in the next life, So you see that way. These trees, you see every living entity as brother, and that we can help them. Just like if you would see your own brother, your own sister, your own relative, you say, oh, you have a problem, you're not feeling well. So everyone is not feeling well. We all are sick with this birth, old age, disease, and death. So if you give Krishna to others, and then what's wonderful, this process of Sankirtan, Harinam Sankirtan, you're becoming Krishna conscious by performing it. You go out on the street and you're giving it as well. It's the simultaneous. It's the most auspicious thing to do. And so, it's getting late. I'm sorry we didn't get through too many verses. But here's a verse about that. Lord Chaitanya is Krishna himself. Come for 2 reasons. One is to spread Krishna consciousness in this age in a way that people can actually take. That is reasonable. And that's why, for the masses especially, he stressed this chanting, public chanting, dancing, musical instruments, and then, very strenuous. And then when you get tired, okay, we have feast. Take some prasadam, that we'll have a little kirtan here, and then afterward there'll be some prasadam for you, all free. So that was his program for the mass of people, and it's very powerful, you see. And so, no hard and fast rule. You know, anyone can participate. Doesn't matter how old you are. Even Prabhupada says on this famous record that came out, the first record was a record of him chanting with the first devotees from 26 Second Avenue. And then he gave an address, you know, explaining the Hare Krishna mantra. It's very famous. And in there, he says, anyone can take part, even a dog can take part. And I always wondered about that. Okay, you know, but what I heard fairly recently was that Prabhupada was on a Harinam with the devotees, and a dog joined in, and he was jumping, you know. So it's a real thing. But the main thing is, you know, people can understand. Prabhupada would go out in the park. I lived next to that park. I was there 2 years late. In 68, he was there in 66. And I was at the Lower East Side, Tompkins Square Park. I lived two blocks from there. And I would go. I missed the pioneering kirtan. He went out himself, Srila Prabhupada, with half a bongo drum. I don't know if you know the bongos. There's 2 drums. So this was one of those drums. That was all the drums. There was no madungas, none of these. So he went out there for 3 hours. He's beating the drum, just chanting Hare Krishna. And he had a few, first timers. You know, there were like half a dozen members then, and it was 26 Second Avenue. And they went out there, and you see, there's a movie made of this. And there's Chutananda dancing and Brahmananda dancing a little bit, and Prabhupada's there. He said he played for 3 hours straight. And it became an event, It started the whole hippie scene, whatever it was, but people were curious, And then he went back to the storefront, and a few people came back, and then they could hear him speak. And this is the way the movement started, and planted the seed. That's Lord Chaitanya's movement. And then eventually we got the Chaitanya Charitamrita, which is the pastimes of Lord Chaitanya and his teachings. So the central verse, Lord Chaitanya didn't write that much, although he taught several disciples. The Rupa and Sanatana Goswami, he personally trained up, and they wrote so many books. But he did write these 8 verses about the holy name, the first of which encompasses the whole understanding of the benefit of chanting. So I'll share that with you. I put it into an English poem. The verse goes like this: Cheto darpana marjanam bhava mahada vagni nirvapanam Shreya kaidava chandikavatadanam vidyavadhu jivanam Anandam buddhivardhanam pratipadam purnamitasvadanam sarvatmasnapadam padam vijayate Sri Krishna Sankirtanam. Now, you might enjoy this, so I'm just going to give you this. YouTube. I chanted this in Mayapur 19 years ago, 2005. And a lot of devotees present. I wasn't planning to do it, but they insisted that I do it. And I chanted all 8 of them with the poetry, and there's music, and a lot of people dancing. If you're interested in that, you can just YouTube search Dravida space Mayapur, and you'll be there, and you see it. Maybe I'll write it out. But anyway, what's the meaning? All glories to the chanting of Sri Krishna's holy names, which easily extinguishes samsara's blazing flames by polishing the lust-encrusted mirror of the heart. That chanting is the waxing moon that knows the secret art of causing the white lotus of good fortune to unfurl its petals far and wide throughout this bleak and blighted world. Of transcendental knowledge, which will take us to life's goal. The chanting of the name of Krishna is the life and soul. The ocean of ecstatic bliss floods far beyond its bounds wherever Krishna's merciful and mystic name resounds. Indeed, whenever Krishna's name is sung in congregation, at every step one tastes a joy that knows no limitation. So hear with great attention as I earnestly request, please chant Shri Krishna's holy names and be supremely blessed. The soothing nectar of the name will bathe your consciousness, bestow pure love for Krishna, and eradicate distress. So, what was I? Oh yes, I wanted to. This is something I don't think anyone has heard here. I used to work for Back to Godhead magazine. This was like one of the backbones of the movement. Prabhupada said when it started, it was just a publication that many devotees would write for, and Prabhupada would also he would speak and we would transcribe his lectures. So it's a long story, but I wrote some articles, and one of the articles was an article about this verse in Back to Godhead, which I can make available to you if you're interested. Going through each one of those 7 benediction benefits from chanting and explaining the context and how they're relevant to us and everything like that. So there it is. Any questions or discussion? I hope I didn't get too far afield. But did we do 1 verse or 2? I think we did 1. Okay. Anyway. Okay. We have some time. Should we do 1 more verse or should we do more poems? Well, let's take a vote. Okay. Poems have the... All right, I'll do some more of the Shikshastika. Let's do the whole Shikshastika. No, we don't have time for that. We have the Hare Krishna and the Arti. So then the next verse, no, he didn't write these. He wrote these at different times, and they were compiled into this Ashtaka. So it goes Nam Akadi Bahudani Dasarva Shaktis Tatarpitani Yamitax Madane Nakala Etadrishita Vakripa Bhagavan Mamapi Durdaivamidisham Mihajani Anuraga. Krishna, Govinda, and Keshava too, your names have no end, and in each of them you have invested your potencies, leaving none out. Whenever we want, we can chant them without the slightest restriction of time or of place. O Lord, who can fathom your infinite grace? But I am so wretched and devoid of all shame that I haven't developed a taste for your name. So how to develop that taste? That's the next verse. This is perhaps the most famous of the 8. Very short. Trinada pisunichena, taro rapisa hishnuna, amanina manadena, kirtaniyak sadahari. More humble than a blade of grass, more tolerant than a tree, to think all praise belongs to others, none belongs to me. Such qualities attract the Lord to bless one with the power to chant His name incessantly until the final hour. There's a lot in that verse. Then what do we pray for when we chant? Lord Chaitanya gives actually 3 verses. Nadanang najanang nasundarin kapitang bhajagadish kamaye mama janmani janmani shode bhavatad bhakta dahaituki twahi. Wealth and women, followers, the fruits of mundane piety, liberation from this world of limitless anxiety. For me, O Lord, these common goals have not the slightest worth. Let me serve you purely now and in each future birth. This is the prayer of the devotee. And there's an ocean of bliss and realization in that service. So then he gives another prayer. Same meter. Ainanda tanuja kinkaram patitam ma vashame bhavam bodhal kripayata vapada pankajas titaduli sadashang vachintaya. Your servant for eternity, I lost my true identity and fell into this horrid sea of birth and death, O Lord. O Nanda's son, please hear my plea. By your sweet grace, consider me a speck of dust upon your lotus feet forevermore. And then he's asking for specific ecstatic, experiences. Same meter. Nayanang gadadasha dadaya vadanang gadgadadudhaya gada pudakaya nachatang vapu kadata banama guhane bhavishiti. Tears streaming from my eyes, my voice choked with bliss, the hair upon my body standing up in happiness. When will all these signs of rapture decorate my limbs as I chant your holy name, the monarch of all hymns? Then now, Lord Chaitanya now is in the mood of Srimati Radharani. And he's actually Krishna, who's come as Lord Chaitanya, who's in the mood of Radharani. So the last 2 are in that mood. Yugayitang nameshena chakshusha pravashahitam shunyahitam jagatsavam govinda vidahename. Every moment drags on like 1,000,000 years or more. From the rain clouds of my eyes, the tears in torrents pour. This whole creation is nothing but a vast and joyless void. Oh Govinda, by your absence I am being destroyed. And then finally, the final verse is a high expression of Radharani's love for Krishna. Ashli Shiva Padadatang Panashtama Madarshanan Marma Hatang Karotava Yatata Tava Vidadhatu Lampato Mat Prananatas to Saheva Naparaha. Let Madhava embrace this maid who's fallen at his feet, or let him trample me on my most ardent hopes defeat by never giving me a chance to see him anywhere, thus shattering my heart and plunging me into despair. You see, he is a restless libertine and not a saint, so let him act in any way he likes without restraint. Yet though his cruel and crooked ways may cause me constant woe, Krishna is the only Lord my heart shall ever know. And that's our signal. We end the class. So, if anyone's interested, I can give you that exact, Dravida Mayapur thing. You can look up on YouTube. interesting because it's like I wasn't planning on it, and I didn't even know it was being recorded. But then they gave me the MP3 after. You seen it? Yeah. All right. All glories to Srila Prabhupada.